before we start, I need a little bit of help. I really like embracing experience and brands, and we're here to talk about a really important campaign. I have bought the alcohol. What I've been informed is, though, that Guinness is a particular way of opening it. Do I have any, this is the audience participation, do I have any Guinness lovers that could just open a can so we can enjoy this, we can see it on stage? There's a whole six-pack waiting. Come on. Oh, come on. Oh, are you serious? There's, oh, JJ? No, there's an art. There's a 45-degree angle. All right. Oh, yeah, there's a whole thing. Are you serious? I'm not going to judge anyone. No? All right, this is going to be a real experiment. Okay, so moving on down, I'd like to call it, so no, JJ, you can do it, but it's going to be a live experiment, and
okay.
Yeah.
No food and drink allowed in the auditorium, but here we are with Guinness.
Gay said that it was okay. Anyway, let me bring down this panel. Yes, a scooter of Guinness, but it's a 40, no, you've got to open it.
And then you've got to have it tilted.
And do not spray it on me. That's okay. Take that away. Anyway, moving on along. I'd like to introduce the panel for this exciting case study of the year. Firstly, Brad Palmer, if you could, the heartbeat behind all of this, the National Programmatic Director of JCDecaux. Welcome. Mark Ryan, the Senior Client Director at and Paul Swann, the Executive Creative Tinker at Thinkerbell. And unfortunately, I have asked all of them to help me with this, and none of them can. So come on down.
Are you sitting?
Yeah, I'm going to sit down. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give the...
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so before this session, what I did do was I scanned this code. I was out at the airport very early this morning. And we're really here to talk about the inaugural, I guess, JCDecaux Programmatic campaign of the year. And one of the campaigns that we're going to talk about is the Guinness campaign. I've already scanned the code, as I mentioned, and it takes you to a site where it tells you about the brewerology, or the Brewery of Meteorology. And that told me that it was time for a Guinness. So it's a bit delayed, but we're getting there. JJ, how's it going?
I have a fair amount of bar work experience. Is that
all right? Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to have to drink it. Oh, Siggy did it. Oh, you. Anyway, let's get back to this. Brad, you have been the force behind this. Can you tell us a little bit about this Campaign of the Year award?
Sure thing. Advertising works. That's I'm not going to spoil Mark's thunder and say how many incremental pints were drunk, but that's another one to add to the list as soon as Elizabeth gets through that pint. Campaign of the Year award was a really exciting initiative that we launched last year, and what it was, and we've already seen it earlier around education, around case studies, around campaigns, it was really to start to drive the industry and drive innovation within this area. There's so many capabilities on the buy side and the sell side that we believe weren't fully getting explored when it came to programmatic out of home. So probably the best way to do that is to put a trophy on the line and try and get some agencies interested in winning some awards. So, you know, we're obviously here to talk about Guinness. Now, the three key areas that needed to be covered off with Campaign of the Year in the entries were, the first one was, you know, the best use of data and programmatic out-of-home features. So we've seen that already on some of those case studies around time targeting, data targeting, all those kind of elements. The second part was the engaging creative concept and the campaign today that we'll talk about, the mouthful that is the Brewery of Meteorology. That was a really great, exciting creative concept. And the third part, and I think this is the crucial part really, is that the campaign needed to have results, right? And I think we've been up here, this is the second year in a row of this. This is probably the fifth or sixth out-of-home, programmatic out-of-home sort of themed event that we've run here in Australia. And everyone was always asking about results. And I think one of the issues is that clients were dabbling a little bit only a little bit of money. You know, the test budgets, the 20, 30K, and what that wasn't doing, it wasn't unlocking measurement. And you know, the Fiji Airways marketers in the past potentially didn't have the results to go back to their commercial team. So what we wanted to do with Campaign of the Year was to get clients to spend a little bit more, invest enough to unlock measurement, be it footfall, be it you know, website attribution and different layers of brand metrics. And this campaign ended up sort of ticking all those boxes. So one thing I'd like to point out, this was not a JCDecaux revenue driving exercise because this was an industry initiative. Only 25% of the campaign had to run across JCDecaux assets. So essentially this, you know, benefited SSP, DSPs and different media owners in this room as well.
Thanks, Brad. Now, Mark, you were sort of this. Can you just set the scene about what this campaign was all about? Because I think the way that it has been done and the linchpin that I'm missing at the moment is the ability to get someone else to pour that pint for me. And what this campaign really did was allow that sort of data and locality to come together. But can you set the scene for everyone that hasn't experienced it yet?
So I think everyone is fairly familiar with Guinness, and it's a pretty iconic brand. But I guess what we were really looking for with this campaign was an opportunity to really hone in on. And beers are, you know, traditionally drunk around the summer period, so we wanted to find our moment in the year where we could really have ownership. And for us, that was winter. So we looked to opportunities where we could be really tactical and really targeted, and through winter. And Programmatic out of home was really that perfect channel to be able to bring our campaign to life. And you know, we work super collaboratively with all of our partners, but I think the best thing about this campaign was the ability to react to the weather in real time. So when the weather dropped below a certain temperature, we would activate our campaign within a proximity to a premise. So within proximity to pubs, and we would offer a free pint. So you would scan the QR code, as you can see in the example here. And if you head into venue, you would show your QR code redemption and you'd be able to redeem a pint. So it was a perfect way, and I think we might get onto this a little bit later around the measurement piece, around how we could take a campaign that's traditionally measured on reach and did we hit the impressions, but what did we drive in terms of a consumer uptake? What did we deliver in terms of a sales increase, in terms of other metrics? So we can get onto that a little bit later.
Awesome. This was I think we're on to the next slide now, Brad, and you might want to... Yep, no, that's okay. And you might want to set the scene, but I want to acknowledge that creatively this was a fabulous campaign. So maybe we can go through the key players around that.
Yeah, so collaboration, I think, was really key on this. Like, we sort of... It was mentioned earlier that there's definitely like a bit of siloing happening here and there. But I think, like, you know, it was evident that there was a clear communication and a clear strategy from you know, media agency through to the trading desk, which was Kinesso, the DSP, which was Vistar, and then also the creative agency, which was obviously Thinkerbell. So it was really nice to see that. You know, a lot of people in this room have worked in out of home for long periods of time, and I think often outdoor creators is the last one that's kind of thought about by some of the creative agencies. Paul's about to tell us that it's the first thing that they think about every day at Thinkerbell, correct? Yeah. But I think that was a really key thing. So that collaboration was important, that all those parties were working together. And, you know, if we're trying to build a bit of a blueprint on how to win Campaign of the Year award next year, I think, you know, creative agencies are definitely, you know, a key part of that.
Does Paul want to talk us through some of the creative?
Yeah, sure.
I want to acknowledge that there's so many different formats, and there was all of these different formats. What's important in out of home, and what's important particularly in programmatic when you're going through all of this creatively?
That's a big one. I mean, just to kind of respond to that question there, I think for a lot of people in the creative world, outdoor is arguably their favourite format, the simplicity, the clarity, the purity, and then obviously with what's happening from a digital perspective, that's just being amplified to give us kind of even more opportunities to bring campaigns to life in interesting ways. Particularly in this instance, I think, you know, picking up on what kind of Mark said, we started off by trying to find a new occasion outside of St Patrick's Day. That's where Guinness was always anchored, and we decided rather than finding just a day or a week or a month, let's find a whole bloody season in winter and really create a kind of a significant category entry point. And then out of that, finding a way of getting people to sample this product that they might just try once or twice a year. And from a creative perspective, quite often what we're trying to do is make things feel special or create some sense of exclusivity or scarcity. And that was what was interesting in terms of this campaign, being able to kind of turn it on and off dependent on the weather conditions. And we discovered something a while back, that the perfect temperature to serve a Guinness is between, I think, 6 and 9 degrees. So we kind of zeroed in on those temperatures and kind of set those as our kind of original benchmarks for how we would turn this campaign on and off creatively. And then it did come down to a kind of maniacal degree of kind of planning and thinking and working with the guys at UN particularly as to how we were going to bring that to life across channels and formats. We've got a pretty established look and feel for the brand, because it is a global brand, but what we had to do to bring this idea to life is kind of work within those guidelines to match the most relevant formats, and also to land the messaging. And there's a bit to say in this. You know, classically Guinness is that beautiful kind of silhouette of the pint, but in this instance, we obviously had to talk to people about what was on offer. You know, give them the QR code that they could then respond to. So, it's a huge planning stage, much bigger than we would normally do. But I think kind of each time we do it, we get better and we get kind of closer to one another in terms of how we bring it to life.
And we've just done it again because it's nearly Guinness season again. So we might see this campaign come back for round 2.
What tips can you give to everyone here about sort of those different formats and adapting to the creative? Because I think there was a long list of how many different adaptations you had to do. Any sort of insights that you can share?
Look, I think we talk a lot about DBAs, distinctive brand assets, really understanding what those are, really understanding what are the key things you want to say, having a clear kind of hierarchy of messaging. We did a lot of work in this where we would develop things and then simplify them to make sure they were match fit for the medium, and being really respectful of the dwell time people had in a particular environment. We look at every kind of scenario kind of on its own merits and develop the work around that, as opposed to a kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all. And then just having a team that really understands what are the ways that this brand visually needs to be brought to life, and what are the messages that need to land, and making sure we don't lose any of those along the way with this kind of cookie cutter approach.
Awesome. All right. Well, this next slide really excites me, because one of the biggest challenges people tell me, I don't think it's a challenge, in using out of home is around measurement. And obviously Move 2 is going to solve a lot of that. But I'm keen to talk about the measurement for the outcome. So, Mark, did you want to take us through some of these impressive results?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess probably casting our minds back to what we saw before around measurement being one of those biggest barriers, and that really was our biggest barrier, is that we weren't keen to go super deep in programmatic out of home because we didn't know how we would measure it. How would we determine success beyond how many impressions we delivered? I mean, we delivered some great impressions across this campaign, but looking at those other results, and I guess what really drove these results and allowed them to be so successful was the strength of the creative. And the fact of what we were really trying to do with this campaign, we were trying to encourage people to scan a QR code, to go into a pub, to redeem a free pint. So a couple of steps, but when there's free booze involved, people are pretty keen to get involved. We saw some great results in terms of our Kantar measurement as well. I've written some down so I make sure I don't forget these, but obviously we grew our brand salience by 3 points. We grew our brand power by 17%. We saw an uplift in traffic into pubs. We ran a footfall measurement study through our wonderful partners at Vista. So we're able to really see how many people were exposed to those pieces of creative, and then where they actually ended up in a pub, and seeing that uplift in foot traffic is pretty successful, especially for Lion, when we on-prem is such a huge important of their sales, and how they how that business really sort of thrives, and that resulted in 2,000 pints that were given out. So I guess what that kind of really said to us is that people were taking action, but they were also remaining in venue. They were buying another pint. They were getting involved in the cold season that it was, being winter. So, giving people that extra little nudge was really successful, and we're really proud of these results.
Awesome. I'll probably ask Paul this about what do you see now as the role of programmatic, and how important is the creative process when you're thinking about these things?
We're thinking about it all the time across kind of all of our brands. I think
Correct answer.
Yeah, there we go. We've always, I think, Thinkerbell have always believed that kind of any time we can get someone to engage with our brands in any way, shape or form, that's a good thing. That's kind of one step towards them reaching for that product ultimately. And so whether that's it just being highly contextually relevant, so they're more kind of emotionally engaged, or kind of their interest is piqued in it, or it means more to them because it's relevant to the place they are, or it's actively asking them to do something, scan a QR code in this instance to kind of, take that one more step towards the brand, or in whatever way, kind of actually physically engaging with it in some kind of deeper kind of degree of interaction. We're always looking to kind of push it beyond that. Like I say, I've always loved out of home for its simplicity and its clarity and its boldness, and the fact that it is forcing you to be reductionist in the message you're giving, but you can do all that and then add this other layer now with technology. So we like to think about, every time we deliver a campaign, kind of how can we take it that one step further, and I think that the digital component to out of home and the programmatic component kind of helps us do that now. Just push it one step further. What else can we do? Where else can we take it? What's that extra nudge we can bring?
And Mark, just building on that, obviously we feel that, out of home and programmatic is the omni-channel, but how do you see the sort of everything coming together? Because this is a great example, but for everyone here, what can they take away from this?
I guess thinking about programmatic out of home and the way that we use it, we generally try to have a really robust channel mix, like I'm sure all campaigns and brands definitely do. And I think where programmatic out of home sits in that varies and is quite specific. I think there's, from an agency perspective, there's more understanding, there's more willingness to try and to add in just a little bit of a percentage, and that's slowly increasing, which is great to see. But I think the role that it's playing, if it's driving, and again, that comes back to the measurement, is around what are we trying to have as that outcome? Are we trying to encourage an action? Are we trying to look at specific targeting? Are we trying to be really bespoke in our creative messaging, our locations? So it really kind of fits into a bit of a broader channel strategy and a campaign strategy. But I think, it's a really important part to have, and I think that we'll definitely see it increase and continue to grow.
I can put the media owner spin on that one. So it probably took us actually about 18 months to sell a campaign into Lion. I think, as you all probably know, Lion is one of the biggest out-of-home spenders, particularly in the alcohol category within out-of-home. So they're quite happy doing their broadcast tactics, and there's a lot of big brands within their portfolio that can afford a lot of that broadcast tactics, and they need to do it. But there's also some brands which don't have those bigger budgets, right? And Guinness is the perfect example of that, because they don't have several $100,000 to be spending on big broadcast campaigns, so they need to be super tactical, super optimised. And in the past, they probably wouldn't have even considered out-of-home for this kind of campaign. So for us, it was a win in the sense that there's a lot of brands out there who have incremental budgets or incremental opportunities that can work within out of home, and the proof is in the campaign really that with even a limited budget they're able to drive really great results and prove the effectiveness of the channel, which I think should hopefully lead to a positive future with Lion and other group brands.
Awesome. I think we're up to sort of the final question for the three of you. We obviously are going to have this Campaign of the Year award next year. What do you think is going to be successful in next year's entrance? Brad can start.
I'll start.
Yeah.
Well, I actually just want to thank particularly sort of and Mark, and we had the opportunity to this actual initiative could have fallen completely on its face, and we had no entries, no uptake. But really, embraced it. We were able to present the trophy at an all-staff town hall, a national town hall, a couple of weeks ago. The global CEO of was in town, and it added some weight and some esteem to the award. So pretty amazing considering it's the first year. So yes, we will be back for round 2. Not sure if there'll be changes or what, but time will tell on that. But I think you've kind of got the blueprint, right? Like we've already spelt it out in terms of the use of programmatic data, the use of, the creative is really important. That became really important, and then the results factor. And what I sort of saw in the leading entries and the ones that were right towards the top of the scoreboard was the fact that they sort of related back to sales. And that was probably a real clincher in this one, and Guinness had the better results.
Yeah, I was pretty inspired by some of the real-time stuff that was up on the big screen earlier, and I think that's an area that as an agency we've explored, but I think we're trying to be more kind of topical and relevant all the time. So I think that real-time thing will be important, as well as the sustainability thing. I think that's just massive, and again, really inspired by the energy case study. I hadn't heard that one, so. I'm already taking lots of inspiration for next year's entry.
And I think it'll be interesting to see what sort of categories this expands to. The fact that programmatic people maybe view on certain different elements around the immediacy, the quickness to market, but will that change? Will that broaden? Knowing the types of inventory that we can run across, does that change the scope or the game? So I think that'll be really interesting to see what's that kind of suite of entrants.
Absolutely agree. Do we have time for any questions that comes with a can of Guinness? No. Yes?
Yeah, I'm just curious in using weather as like the linchpin of the campaign, whether you at any stage ran into any problems with it, like not complying, essentially, like you run through a warm spell, all of a sudden you have a certain impression for a week or two. Just whether you did have any issues with that, how you managed it.
Yeah, definitely. So we had different weather triggers on different markets. So we had a different threshold in Western Australia versus Victoria, and we sort of kept it quite broad. I think there was a slide earlier that sort of we referred to it as cold versus very cold. So a little bit ambiguous in the way, but I mean, Paul obviously spoke to it as well around, we were looking for that kind of perfect temperature where Guinness is really the right drink to sort of consume in that moment. And I think something that we're taking into this year is to broaden that campaign period out longer. So if in the next week or so we have a huge cold spell in Sydney, we might be able to quickly go into market with our campaign. So again, that immediacy is really, really cool with programmatic at home.
Yes, it's rare that you're praying for the cold weather and the rain, but we yeah, but that was so debated, and it was front of mind throughout, wasn't it? And what were those right settings and scenario planning again, big time around all that.